We as Christians, even in Romania, we talk end time about earthquake, about different things. And you put together some strange topics, like a flood, like a creation, of course, genetics experiments, and even restoring of Israel. So many things came together maybe in an unusual way. Can you give us some light on this idea?
My book, Floodgates, is actually puts in writing a conversation I've been having with God for about 15 or 20 years about events around us that just seem prophetic. And one of the things that we see is earthquakes, tsunamis, different disasters, hurricanes, and some people link it to, this, a lot of Christians will say, well, that's because of this sin or that sin. A good example was Hurricane Katrina that hit New Orleans right after the disengagement, Israel withdrawing from Gaza. And there were some American Christian leaders who said, New Orleans was judged because it's such a center of sin and decadence and prostitution and gambling. And a lot of pro-Israel Christians, fellow Christian Zionists, said, no, it's because the U.S. forced Israel out of Gaza. And I just have a trouble with, pointing to some disaster here and there and saying it's God's judgment because of this sin or that sin. And we see New Orleans as a city, it rebuilt within 2 years and was right back to its same old sins within 2 years. And if God judges something, we're still looking for Sodom and Gomorrah. We don't even know exactly where they were. They were destroyed so completely by God. When God judges, it is beyond repair and beyond recovery. And the message of these disasters is always repent. Jesus says, don't think that the Tower of Siloam falling on those 18 people, that they were any worse sinners than you. I tell you, repent, because something like that could affect you any day. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. And, this question of whether God is doling out his judgment a little here and a little there for the way the nations are treating Israel, or for this and that sin, homosexuality, abortion, things that are this growing rebellion in the earth. And the flood model says this, Brother Tudor, it says that God is actually letting man's sin go to ripen to judgment, and the rebellion is growing, and the whole time he is storing up his judgment in heaven. Paul in Romans 1 says that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven. How? He stores it up, and he lets you cross another line and another line and another line, and he's actually withholding his judgment. And I believe what is happening is the earth itself, the natural world around us is impacted by man's sin. And just as Adam sinned and death entered the world and spread to all men, it spread to the natural world as well, to animals and plants. There's a death process in everything because of what we did. And I believe there's an increase in sin, a growing rebellion among us, and that nature can sense it and is going a little haywire. That explains for me, just as Paul says, that nature itself is travailing as a woman in childbirth for the consummation of the age and the birthing of the sons of God. But I think one of the things that really, part of the conversation I had with God is, why has he withheld his judgment for the Holocaust? And it's not only where was God in the Holocaust, where was he afterwards? Why didn't he judge Germany for the mass murder of 6 million Jews? And of course, man judged Germany. We bombed its cities. We divided the nation for 40 years. But Germany was back on its feet as an economic power within 20 or 25 years ago. And you don't recover so fast if God truly judges you. And you see the attitude of many Germans today towards Israel, that almost half the nation in different studies studies that have been done, almost half the nations say that Israel is doing to the Palestinians the same thing or worse than the Nazis did to the Jews 70 years ago. And if you truly understood what the Nazis did, what they stood for, and the atrocities they committed, and understand that here they're wiping out 6 million Jews, 2 million, two-thirds of the Jews of Europe, and the Palestinian population has been growing and growing, and Israel has brought improvements to their lives, higher birth rates, better medical standards, better education. I've just come to the realization God has given Germany a special period of grace, but there will be a judgment that God's judgment over Germany and even Britain for not letting Jews into Palestine, America for not letting Jews escape the Nazi threat to come to America. We closed our shores. There's a lot of judgment that God has stored up in heaven for the Holocaust, for the rejection of the Jews, for the way we imperiled them, for our acceptance of homosexuality, for all the millions and millions and tens of millions of aborted babies, that we do not think that we have escaped these things, that the day of reckoning is come, and it comes in a flood of fire, fire, fire. That's what the book is about.
The final question, you mentioned in your book something about the remnant. Yes. How you see the remnant now, with having this perspective of this interesting book?
For the flood to serve as a complete analogy or model for our day, there needs to be two added elements. One is a righteous remnant in the earth, just as Noah and his family and his obedience and reverence to God built an ark that saved them and made them the start of the new age to come. And also something similar to the building of the ark, an unmistakable sign, a warning sign. God is fair, He gives warning, some sort of sign about the judgment to come. And I believe that the righteous remnant in the earth is the evangelical body. Jesus says you must be born again. And that the sweep of the evangelical movement into nations and areas that never got the gospel before. In our generation, more Chinese born again than in all the generations put together before. More Indians coming to Christ in our lifetime than in all the generations before. And you see this move of God, that even though in the West a lot of the church is backsliding and is in apostasy, there's this growing remnant that God is going to preserve in the days ahead for the age to come, the Messianic age. And I believe that the building up of Zion, the restoration of Israel, is like the building of the ark, the most unmistakable sign that we're about to be judged.